Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It is Annihilation, which is because it's May, and I'm going to talk about Annihilation. Over the next month, there's going to be several videos and a bunch of shorts going through the entire event of Annihilation. It took place over 3 trade paperbacks and a little bit more than that. I personally didn't know about this. I read the Thanos series that kind of started to set things up. That's what we're going to talk about today. And then these I bought in trades as they came out afterwards, so I kind of missed the boat on it because I was deep into Civil War. Anyway, the story of Annihilation goes... Well, the story of Annihilation, I guess the story is that, like, Annihilus from the negative zone is expanding into the actual positive zone, our universe in the comics, and there's just this wave of bug monsters and spaceships and stuff just flowing over outer space. And the idea was all these space heroes had to team up and stop the Annihilation wave. But the story behind the scenes goes, there was an editor named Andy Schmidt, and he was like, hey, I want to do an event in space and reinvent all these space characters, because nobody really, Joe Quesada in particular, just didn't care about Cosmic Marvel. And anytime anybody did anything Cosmic Marvel, it was Infinity War or Infinity Crusade or Infinity Gems or Infinity Abyss. It was always Thanos. It was usually written by Jim Starlin, and Adam Warlock was there, and I'm not going to knock Jim Starlin. He did some really great stuff, but it's all kind of the same thing. It's not actually the same thing, but it's all very samey. It's just Thanos, 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 Thanos. As I said, Annihilation starts with Thanos. There was a Thanos ongoing series, and the first 6 issues were written by Jim Starlin, and they were fine. And I read that, and I was like, oh, cool, a Thanos solo series. This is neat. So I stuck with it. And then after it ended, Keith Giffen came in to do the last 6 issues. So I guess it didn't end, but Keith Giffen came in. And Keith Giffen is a really good writer, and he set up a lot of Annihilation and what we know now as Cosmic Marvel was established here. So let's dive into Thanos. Honestly, it was the style of the time was where they started also writing for trades. So a story that could have been in an issue or 2 was now expanded over 6 issues, even if it had to be drawn out to that. Nowadays, it's gotten better at storytelling just being what it needs to be, but also developing a story for that. So this was like when that was starting. So drawing things out over 6 issues was painful in times. Cat's trying to get in, doesn't need to. Also, the lighting is off, but that's unrelated. This is just a whole disarray. So for this month, you're going to see some stuff in disarray. Anyway, Thanos opens with Thanos. He's all cloaked and he's walking through town and he's looking for the Omega Core. And the Omega Core are something that was really cool and set up and just not really established as well as they could have been. And there's this guy from Earth named Cole, and he's like, how did I get here? I'm just from Earth and now I'm this space cop. And honestly, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. The Omega Core doesn't really matter. What matters is Thanos shows up to the Omega Core and he's like, hey, check it out, I'm Thanos. I'm turning myself in because I want to go to jail. And they're like, whoa! And he's like, okay, he doesn't put up a fight, so they take him. That's pretty much issue 7. One whole issue. And the jail they are taking him to is called the Kiln, and it's this space prison that is now created for this. And it is just this big prison at a part of the universe called the Crunch. It's a prison, and that's just kind of where they put people. People are in the Kiln, and Thanos is going there for a reason. He's looking for something or someone in particular. They don't say. And he goes there, and people are like, hey, Thanos, you suck. We don't like you in here, and it doesn't go well for them. He destroys them. He beats them up, because he's Thanos. It's kind of just... He's Thanos. He's very unstoppable. And he talks to somebody. He's like, hey, I'm looking for something. And they're like, oh, well, come here. This is probably what you're looking for. And he takes him to the secret meeting. And in the secret meeting, we meet the Gladiator from the Shi'ar Imperial Guard and a couple other people that aren't important. And Star-Lord, or he's just Peter Quill. This isn't quite the Peter Quill we know from Guardians of the Galaxy. This Peter Quill he's no longer Star-Lord. Okay, really quick history on Star-Lord. Star-Lord was created in like the 70s or 80s, and there were stories, but all those stories weren't really in the Marvel Universe. They were set outside of the Marvel Universe, where Star-Lord is this spacefaring adventurer, cat, spacefaring adventurer, and he's got this cool costume and stuff. And then, so basically this now is the first official appearance of Peter Quill in the Marvel Comics proper. And they don't say his adventures happened. They happened, because he's like, oh, you're Star-Lord. And he's like, I used to be Star-Lord. I'm not Star-Lord anymore. He's got all this technology stuff in his eye, and he's this grizzled war vet kind of guy. And that's Star-Lord. He eventually obviously became Star-Lord as we know him from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. It started to take place more in Annihilation 2, which was Annihilation Conquest. We're not going to get to that just yet. We will. Maybe next in May for Annihilation 2. Don't know. The actual story happened like 3 months after this one because this was such a hit. So basically Gladiator and Star-Lord are there, just Peter Quill. And they're like, okay, you're here to help us, Thanos. You got to team up with us because the Beyonder is here. And he's in a lady's body and he calls himself the Maker, but like, we're here to deal with this. Gladiator has set up false charges and come to prison under false pretenses to fight and stop this thing. And Star-Lord is just there because he's there. They don't really say why. And Thanos is like, nah, I'm here for other reasons. And he walks off and he goes and there's people fighting and he gets in the middle of that fight. Then the Maker shows up and was like, hey, Thanos, did I know you in another life or whatever? And Thanos was like, yeah, sure. Were we special? And he's like, nah. And she doesn't like that answer. And And Thanos survives that because he's Thanos. They're like, hey, Thanos, you want to help us now? And he's like, no, but fine, whatever. And he goes and he confronts the Maker, and this time he beats the crap out of her and wins. And there's like, there you go, Gladiator, I dealt with your problem for you, okay? And Gladiator's like, cool, you gonna stick around, or where are you going? And he's like, I'm going elsewhere. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. So far, everything I've described is 4 issues. Like, did that need to be 4 issues? No, that was the style at the time. Then the next issue, we see where he was going. He's looking for the Fallen One. There's this other area of the Kiln prison where I think super powerful beings are kept in these cocoon pods. And I should point out earlier, the Maker opened a small cocoon pod and out came Screet. And Screet is this little pixie nymph character from another comic that Keith Giffen did a long time ago called Lunatic. We'll talk more about Lunatic when we get to the Drax miniseries that tied into Annihilation. But Lunatic was this thing from the 90s that Keith Giffen did, and there was this little character named Screet, and she's there now. And she finds Thanos after Thanos got beat up, and she's like, hey, I'm going to be annoying as heck, and I'm going to talk to you. And then all through Annihilation, if you ever see pictures of Thanos from Annihilation, he's got this little pixie on his shoulder, and that's Screet, and she's there for a reason. Because Keith Giffen's like, yeah, why not? Anyway, they go and they look into the Fallen One, and they're like, oh, the pod's open. Oh no, what's wrong? And Star-Lord shows up, and he's like, oh, Thanos is like, I knew you were going to be here because you're looking for the Fallen One too, right? And Star-Lord's like, oh, whatever, I don't care. But it turns out that Star-Lord actually was the one that brought the Fallen One in. The Fallen One, I should point out too, is, I believe, the first Herald of Galactus. And it's a Herald of Galactus that went rogue and doesn't like Galactus and wants to kill Galactus. And that's what they're talking about. Like, well, the Fallen One always goes after Galactus, and Galactus always beats him down. But this time, what if Galactus were left in a diminished state? And I guess I should point out now that at the end of the portion of Thanos that was written by Jim Starlin, Thanos had left Galactus in a diminished state. Beat the crap out of him, and actually smashed 2 planets together into him to destroy something called the Hunger, which was from another universe. Like I said, it wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. So the Fallen One's like, well, I'm going to go get Thanos, and he's diminished, so I might beat him. And Thanos and Screet just leave the Kiln. They teleport out because Thanos could have left at any point in time because he's Thanos. And they leave. Gladiator comes back and grabs Star-Lord. He's like, Star-Lord, you're the one that brought this guy in last time, so, you know. And he's like, oh, great, so we're going to go fight the Fallen One? And Gladiator's like, no, actually, we're just going to go let Thanos deal with that, and then we'll deal with Thanos after, maybe? Which they don't. They don't ever come really up again. Huh. Yeah. So some of this is filler, I guess. Anyway, Thanos goes, and he stands between Galactus and the Fallen One, and they fight, and he beats the crap out of the Fallen One, and then does a thing on his brain, and he's like, yeah, you're mine now, I think. Yeah. And Screech is like, what? He's like, yeah, this idea of a herald is a cool idea, so I brainwashed this guy, and now he's my herald. He's a herald of Thanos. That's cool. And Screech is like, yeah, cool. And like, well, what next? Like, the universe is going to end or whatever, and Thanos was just like, yeah, we'll be dead, and that's what I want, and I'm all about that. And that's where the series ends. Thanos wasn't officially tied to Annihilation in any way, shape, or form. It was just written by Keith Giffen, and it set up a lot of things. Those things it set up, I guess, were Star-Lord, who doesn't play a huge part in Annihilation. Thanos, where he was, I guess, just setting up where Thanos was, he plays a big part in Annihilation. Fallen One and Screet, I guess, by default, play a part in Annihilation. Really just the Kiln. The Kiln is what kind of plays a big part in Annihilation. The Drax series that we'll get to was written by Keith Giffen, and Drax is on his way to the Kiln. But then when the Annihilation comes, I guess I shouldn't be jumping ahead, but here I am. When the Annihilation wave comes, one of the first things they do is take out the Kiln. And there was something in the Kiln that was hidden and kept in the Kiln for a reason. It's I guess it's Aegis and Tenebris, who are like other Galactus type beings. I think they're Galactus' brother and sister. Maybe not. They're like Galactus type beings that are being held in the Kiln for the universe's own good. And almost that is just a side thing in Annihilation. Annihilation's really good, so subscribe so you don't miss anything else that I'm going to talk about with Annihilation. The next miniseries, we got a Drax miniseries, we got a Super Skrull miniseries, we got a Nova miniseries, we got a Silver Surfer miniseries, we got a Ronan the Accuser miniseries, we got an Annihilation prequel, we got the Annihilation 6-issue miniseries itself, and then afterwards the Heralds of Galactus, and then there's an Annihilation What If thing coming. So, I mean, as well as I've taken the Nova Core files, which was just 42 individual entries about who is who. And I've read those just kind of as an entry. Like, they're like this. Basically little encyclopedia entries, and we get a who's who on who is who in the whole Annihilation series. You know, the Delinquent, the Centurions, they're spread out amongst these trade paperbacks, but there's a bunch of little fun who's who. Anyway, I'm rambling because that's what I do. I'm glad to be back in front of the camera. My name is Haussmann Comics. If you could do me a favor and like this video, and subscribe, and keep coming back for all of my content, that'd be awesome. Peace. I did a thumbs up, but it was below camera. Peace.